Good afternoon, everybody. It is September 25th, 2024, a beautiful day outside. Let's call the meeting to order with roll call, please.
Mayor Skidmore.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen.
Present.
Commissioner Kaler. Commissioner Clayton.
Present.
And Commissioner Crowley.
Present.
Okay, welcome everybody here. We do have a quorum, and we will get started with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by invocation by our city manager.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, in your word have given us a vision, that holy city to which the nations of the world bring their glory. Hold and visit, we pray, cities of the earth. Renew the ties of mutual regard which form our civic life. May we be honest and able leaders. Enable us to eliminate poverty, prejudice, and oppression. Peace may prevail, righteousness and justice with order, and that men and women from different cultures, differing talents, may find with one another the fulfillment of their humanity. In your name we pray.
Amen. Thank you, Brian. We'll move on to public comments. Do we have any today?
Have none registered.
Okay, move on to the proclamation. We do have a proclamation recognizing Optimist Club's 50th anniversary, and will be read by Mayor Pro Tem Allen.
The proclamation reads as follows. Whereas the Ottawa Optimist Club was chartered on September 26, 1974 through the Lawrence Optimist Club and Ronald Spencer, Martin F. Burek, and Albert L. Kiefer, and others were the first chartered members. And whereas in 2016 the Ottawa Club became the Franklin County Optimist Club and Wellsville was added. And whereas the Franklin County Optimist Club makes a difference in the lives of children and youth in Franklin County. And whereas the Franklin County Optimist Club has grown to be a highly successful community organization numbering over 50 members, and in 2024 provided over 27 programs or opportunities for youth in Franklin County. And whereas Franklin County Optimists are unbounded in their enthusiasm to use their own talents, skills, and hard work to make a difference in the lives of youth. And whereas the Optimist Creed says to always wear a cheerful countenance at all times and give every living creature you meet a smile. Therefore, the governing body of the city of Ottawa, Kansas does hereby proclaim September 26, 2024 as Franklin County Optimist Club Day, in recognition for all the work they do to serve the youth of Franklin County. Signed this 25th day of September 2024 by our mayor, Mike Skidmore.
Well, thank you for reading that. I know we'll give a formal presentation to their celebration of Ottawa University. I believe it's next week. It's just encouraging to read hear some of the names of those gentlemen that started this organization, and they're still with us, and they're great people. So we're certainly thankful for their beginnings and continue on as force, of course. We'll move on to the consent agenda. We do have the minutes from the September 18th meeting, the August 25th Planning Commission meeting, the August financial report, and the agenda approval. I just will add one thing. We do have a slight correction on the 901 South Cherry PUD. It just says the last paragraph, the Mayor Pro Tem declared this ordinance duly approved. The Mayor Pro Tem wasn't here that day, so just change that and we're good. So with that correction, I will entertain a motion to agree with the consent agenda, which contains all the items mentioned.
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
There's a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Move on to declaration. At this time, I'd like to give the commissioners a chance to declare any conflict or communication they've had that might influence their ability to consider today's issues impartially. Hearing none, we'll go on to no unfinished business. So let's move right on to item 11, new business.
Item A, review of monthly reports for August 2024.
We'll start with Franklin County Development Council Executive Director, Paul Bean. Paul, welcome.
Hello, Commissioners. Just a couple of things. One, we had a successful luncheon today with Panasonic coming down and sharing some information with close to 50 people from our community. So that was very informative and helpful, and Appreciated the participation by a number of folks from the city. Also working diligently on our career day. It's October 9th. We have all the t-shirts in. They are hot pink is what the kids wanted this year, so they'll be easy to see. But really appreciate, we're getting tremendous support again from a number of folks across the community. Great support from the city. Appreciate that very much. And looking forward to a great day on the 9th. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I just saw something about working with the second grade through the high school, or what was something about the second grade programs?
Yeah, I've met with each of the superintendents at all the different school districts and offered different programming opportunities that we can support through FCDC. The 2nd through 5th grade is Lemonade Day, and that's programmed for kids. It's 4 one-hour sessions in a booklet. It talks about very basics, running a business, and then they actually do it, have their business, and then break back down and walk through that. And one of the cool things, if any of the school districts want to do it, one of the cool things as a former banker, and you get this, Mike, is we have the kids sit down and get their loan to start their business. And so they get $25, and then they do their business, and then theoretically they would pay it back, but we're not going to make them. But
What?
I know. Well, that's why I quit banking. I wasn't very good on the lending side. And then we have offered up for girls in middle school that we can identify and have identified some strong females in our business community that come and speak to our middle school girls about the opportunities and how they got to where they're at. And then offered up at the kind of the freshman, sophomore level, any industry of interest, we could have those folks come and speak to a class or a group about what they do. And then that would leads in then to career day for all the juniors. So basically just went about and offered those opportunities to each of the school districts. We'll get through career day, and then I'll follow up, and I'm sure we'll do some of those in various districts. But just trying to get some of that career awareness through the school system.
It's a great program. I'm glad you're doing that. Good start for them anyway.
Yeah,
so.
we'll see if they nibble on it, but yeah, I'm excited about it.
Fantastic. Good. Any other questions of Paul?
Not really a question. Just wanted to touch base on that you attended the World Cup informational session. I think that's great. Obviously, we're just under 2 years out, but it comes a lot faster than we think.
Yep.
Are you aware, is there going to be a group within Franklin County that's kind of getting multiple organizations, kind of proximate groups together to kind of work on some ideas or any of that stuff?
Yeah, I think we're heading in that direction. We're behind, but this was a good meeting hosted by Sharice Davids that kind of talked about some of the opportunities and things that we need to be thinking about in relation to the World Cup and economic impact, as well as I put in there that they're going to be needing first responders, and so they're working on the federal level about how do they refund money back to the communities that are putting their first responders up in the city, which I'm sure we'll be asked to do. So we want to work on getting those funds back to the city. But what really came out of that is right after the meeting, Sharice is like, come here, and went over and she said, what'd you think? And I said, well, I think this is pretty Kansas City centric and we need more depth for us surrounding counties. And she agreed wholeheartedly. So they're going to start pulling us some meetings after the election to help us. But, I've already reached out to one of our industries and trying to get them plugged in from a licensing standpoint so that they can produce some materials that would have the World Cup logo on it that they could sell. So there's opportunities like that. Obviously, there's a ton of lodging opportunities that are going to take place, and some cultural opportunities. So right now I'm working on trying to find out where do those international travelers go to see where to stay, what to do. So how do we get plugged into that, first of all? And then when we get a little more information, I think you're absolutely right, is we'll want to be a little more aggressive probably after the first of the year and sitting down and what do we do? Part of that will depend upon which countries are coming. We won't know that till mid-year to third, fourth quarter. So we'll be under the gun to do something. But there's a ton of opportunities then. You know, my dream is I'd love to have some of those players come and do a camp for our college and high school and middle school kids and whoever else. But a lot of cultural opportunities through our restaurants and that type of thing. And of course, like I said, the lodging's going to be huge opportunity on a number of levels. So how do we plug into that? How do we maximize the benefit? So a lot of work to do, and we all agreed we're behind. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's great. Any more questions of Paul? I think we're good.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. We'll go on to Ottawa Library. I don't think Harry's here. Anybody? No, we'll go right on. Let's move on to Ottawa Main Street. Director Sarah.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I have a few things. Our third Thursdays, as you know, we do once a month. It's running from April to October. A little back here because we're reporting on August for this month. So for August, sorry, we had a great month. We had 506 people that we could count through just the booths. Our reports show that there's more people than that downtown. But through our receipt raffle in that 3-hour period, we could calculate $4,800 spent downtown. So that was pretty successful. And seeing how they're going from businesses, whether it be looking at the vendors or looking at the restaurants or how they're going about that is cool to see. We wrapped up our Parade of Champions and collaborating with Ottawa University. And I've been working with Ottawa University for the last year and a half. And it's not just that we need students downtown. It's very much that OU needs students or community impact on campus or at their sporting events and things like that. So helping each other and how can we work together to do those things. We then participated in Fusion. The Parade of Champions went from that into Fusion. We wrapped up our memberships, our affiliates, and we went from 53 last year to 72 this year. With the amounts, if you look at the graphs that I sent you, it's kind of hard to look at the number because we shift things up and how much each level is worth. So last year we made almost 10,000. This year we made over 22 in our memberships. So we were able to up on that. Other than that, we have a lot of movement, a lot of building owners interested in investing in the upper level living and talking about different things and options that are available there to help with the income coming in on their building, as well as whether they own the building and run a business downstairs, or if they're just a building owner and rent both up and down out. Both looking at different ways of how we can stack things. It is a prime opportunity right now to be able to stack opportunities that are available to investings. So with that, I stand for any questions.
I did notice you're from 23 to 24. It's about a 30% increase in your affiliates. So congratulations on that. I'm curious. I don't know if we ever done have we ever done any kind of a penetration percentage as far as all of our downtown merchants, what percent are in Main Street or not? That's just an idea.
We have not. It did ruffle some feathers whenever we changed our membership tiers. It was a big change, but we went from, it had been $100 for 14 years, and our lowest tier is now $250. So
Okay.
I have some that were saying that we can't do it, but at the same time, our numbers show that people are still supporting us.
That's good. I noticed they're missing some of the financials. Maybe get those next time, but I didn't see any financials in here. Maybe we can get them.
Oh, I thought they were sent over. I can look at them though.
Okay. We get them later. I'm sure it'll be fine with me. So good. Any other questions of Sarah? Anybody have? Good.
All right, thank
I
you.
think we're good. All right. Sarah, thanks a lot. We got Prairie Paws next. I guess Vanessa, you're here. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Thanks for having me. So we had our biggest fundraiser of the year last Friday, September the 13th. And our goal is to raise 10% of our operating budget in one single evening. And we did that. So we raised almost exactly $70,000 in that evening. So anyone who came, I just want to thank everyone for being there.
Great.
It was amazing. It was fun. and it was very successful. So we're already planning the next one. That's how it goes in fundraising. Wow. It never stops. So our next event that we have coming up on October 5th it's called Boktoberfest. It's a CrossFit 5K walk. It's kind of like donating by being physically active, and that is at an address in Gardner. So you can go to our website to learn more about that. And then the Maple Leaf Gravel Grind is coming up, and that also benefits Prairie Paws as well. We're one of the beneficiaries of the Maple Leaf Gravel Grind. So if you want to register to join that, you can also do that on our website. Any questions?
Any questions anybody have? I just had one on, I know you have some cremation expenses. Obviously, that's part of the business. You don't own your own crematory. I guess you contract this out, or where do you?
We do, yeah. And it is, obviously, unfortunately, disposable of our animals as that needs to be done. But we also offer that to the public as well. So if you lose a pet in your home, we can arrange for it to be disposed of as well through the animal shelter. So we contract that out, but we're kind of a middleman because there's no local crematory in Franklin County for animals.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it pretty expensive apparatus, or what's that involved?
It is. It's very much a human grade piece of equipment just utilized for animals. So very expensive to operate. Yeah.
So it's even better to contract out than to buy your own, I guess.
We would never do the volume, I think, that would justify it. So, and all the local veterinarians contract with the same company. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I've seen cremations in India, and they just put people up on sticks and put sticks under them. And we don't want to do that here either.
I don't want to do that.
Okay, we don't want to go there. Okay.
Do that.
That's pretty interesting. But anyway, nonetheless, I do see we're still in the black, and that's always good, too. I like that color, right?
There is. I don't know if you noticed because you look at our finances very closely, but we logged some income to miscellaneous income. We finally received our employee retention credit from the IRS that we had applied for over a year ago. And we're finally starting to receive that money in. So we're coding that to the miscellaneous income, and that's what that is. So we're happy to have it.
Great. Actually, I missed that, but I'll watch it next time. So very good. Glad you said that. Any other questions? All right. Good job, Vanessa.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work. Thanks. We'll move on to, where are we at on 11B?
Rural Housing Incentive District, RHID discussion.
We're going to review the RHID policy and housing incentives information that we presented for commission discussion. And Melanie's going to take care of this.
And Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, I would like to say that we had anticipated bringing a more comprehensive and holistic 360-degree approach to our economic development policies, and ordinarily this would be toward the end of that discussion once we'd kind of identified the approach to the strategy. However, we anticipate bringing an application to you shortly, so it kind of brought this to the forefront. So
very good. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so this policy is often referred to as the Rural Housing Incentive District, but also you see it often referred to as a Reinvestment Housing Incentive District. So if you see it either way, they both mean RHID and they're both the same program. And I might also mention that our bond counsel, Tyler Ellsworth, is with us virtually as well, so to answer any questions. Really, the purpose of bringing this to you today is to review our policy portion, to give you an update as to what RHID can be used for, and to hopefully engage in some discussions about housing incentives and maybe levels of those housing incentives, where we'd like to go with that conversation, especially since we do have an application pending. It's actually in the but-for analysis stage right now, and so we will be bringing that to you very, very soon, beginning actually next week. So the program background, just to give you a little bit of history here on just our policy, but also the advancements that have been made in just the RHID Act itself under statute. The statute does allow for this type of incentive, which is a property tax supported incentive with a term of up to 25 years. It is a reimbursement of allowable expenses to the developer. So it does happen incrementally over time as a reimbursement to them for allowable expenses that are determined at the front of the project. So the original RHID Act was really for the purpose of allowing a property tax incentive for housing, which didn't necessarily exist outside of an NRP program at that time, and to put in public infrastructure and acquire the land to be able to provide housing. Then there was an update along the way that allowed for the renovation and or construction of upstairs apartments or upstairs living in your downtown district. And that is used, I think, probably quite frequently across the state to be able to now produce residential living in your downtown district. But we also have our NRP district does cover our downtown district. So it's not likely that you'll see it used very often in our downtown district simply because an RHID process actually has a larger cost to doing that than our NRP program does. And so the benefits could be very similar, with the exception of an RHID district, of course, can be reimbursed up to 25 years. However, rarely is that used the full benefit of the allowable years because the project allowable expenses may not actually reach that level of need for incentive. And so oftentimes you'll see that pared back slightly in the 10 or 15 year range, which in our case does make it fairly comparable to our NRP district already. Also, as a side note there, our NRP and this incentive are both the use of property taxes, so you wouldn't see those paired together. They're using the same incentive, so you wouldn't want to stack those.
Good.
The third option, and this was just put into place last year, was, in 2023, was that you could now use RHID for vertical construction. So you used to only be able to use it for public infrastructure. Then they added the downtown district. And now they've said that if you have had public infrastructure in the ground for more than 10 years, then you could use it for vertical construction of those homes. So just as our policy summary, and our policy is a bit outdated and we will be updating it to include both those last 2 points that I brought to your attention. Right now, it just includes the first. But I think that the key points that are included in here, plus our eligibility for our prioritization of projects, are still fairly relevant. And so that's why I want to bring cover for you here. So our policy says that an RHID can be used for a minimum of 10 renter occupied units. That the developer pays for the cost of the improvements up front and then is reimbursed on a pay-as-you-go basis. And so there's no reimbursement up front. It's a pay-go. The primary objective is to incentivize construction or the rehabilitation of the quality housing. And there's 4 key points underneath of that item or that objective. Quality house or a shortage of quality housing in various price ranges. The shortage expected to persist if we do not provide incentives, the substantial deterrent to our economic growth for the community, both city or county, and the future economic well-being of the city or county depends on it. And then our eligibility or the prioritization that we would use to evaluate any of those applications, and this is why we do a but-for analysis or a gap analysis for an RHID application, is because we want to know, are there extraordinary or unique costs for this project? What is the level of financial investment of the applicant? What is the revenue generated from the project and the value added results of the project to our community? So does it offer any additional revenue streams that might be coming in as a result of adding that additional housing? And then the history of timely property tax payments, because this is a property tax incentive, and we want to make sure that those that they are providing the property tax payments that they should on any properties that they own within the city. This is a timeline that we've put together, and this is very small on the screen. It was included in the packet for you as well, but also something that we hand to our applicants to kind of say, hey, this is what you can expect as far as a timeline. Now, if you were to add up all of these days, it's over 200 days, and that seems like an incredibly long process. But the reality is multiple sections of this, they overlap. And so it does end up being a rather shorter timeline, I guess. And so, for example, once the applicant provides the application, they do pay an application fee. That's as part of our policy. They do provide a $5,000 deposit to be used for the consultant fees that go along with the analysis for the application. But then as soon as we receive that, then we're sending it off for the but-for analysis to get started. It does require a housing needs analysis, which we have. And so that's why you've seen FCDC update our housing analysis every 2 years, because it has to be within 2 years and relevant to the community in order for us to move ahead with this process. And then we'll bring to you a resolution that's basically you acknowledging or adopting those findings, acknowledging that the housing need is there and that a district could be established because those housing needs are there. And then the Secretary of Commerce has to provide consensus. So again, that's a part of the process we don't control. But once we send that off to them and they're in the process of reviewing and sending back their consensus, we can be doing the rest of our work. And that is proposing an incentive level that might be consistent with what you might want to see for housing incentives offered, putting together that development plan and that development agreement that would be used in the next steps. And then as soon as we get that consensus back from the Secretary of Commerce, then we would be looking for a public hearing and then a follow ordinance that actually establishes the district. And then in this type of incentive, and this is different from many of the other incentives, is that there is a veto opportunity for the county and school district to say, no, we in fact don't want that to happen. So they have 30 days to veto that process. So I might add, I kind of forgot to add this in here. Up at the front of this process, before we even bring to you all of the incentives or that negotiated development plan, we meet with, and this is on all of our incentives, the city has a process or a procedure, which is unique, I believe, to meet with the county and school district and others engaged within our city to make sure that everybody's on the same page and understands the incentives that have been requested and what the recommendation is based on that gap analysis. So if they have any questions or concerns about what that might do for them, because these property tax incentives are affecting them as well. So they have the same result as we do. So those property taxes are taken from the bulk and given back to the developer that's agreed upon in the development plan. So even though you're the ones that are putting all of that in place through an ordinance and adopting the development plan and all of those things in any of your incentives, in this case, they would have the chance to come back and veto.
So you're earlier talking about the NRP. I'm thinking in our program, the NRP, it's much more efficient. Efficient's maybe not the right word, but not as many steps to get approval, nor
Yes.
is the price. What is our application fee for the NRP? Is it anything?
It's very low.
$35? I thought I saw
20
$35.
$25. I'm not
It's
sure.
minimal
It's
compared
very,
to
very minimal.
This, and then I don't know. Do we require a but-for analysis?
We do not.
We don't.
We do
So
not.
to me, it sounds like NRP certainly is the way to go if someone would want to do it more, of course, being a lot more simple than this process. But nonetheless, maybe this serves the purpose, like you said earlier, as far as time frame goes.
Yeah. And this process, of course, our NRP does not cover the entire city. And so a lot of times these applications, and especially the one that we'll be bringing to you, are for those developments that live outside of the NRP district
Makes sense.
itself.
Yeah, good point.
Mhm.
Good.
Or do you see, now that the upper story RHID was approved, most of those areas, kind of a central business district will have multiple owners of those buildings. Are you seeing kind of around the state where the city, another group comes in, applies for that whole zone, and then kind of individual building owners within that are able to kind of apply? Or how does that look for somewhere like that would be so stacked we probably wouldn't do each parcel on like Main Street individually?
Tyler, if you're online, would you be able to answer that question?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Tyler Ellsworth with Kutak Rock. I think as a practical matter, you could designate an entire downtown as eligible through a single housing needs assessment and a single approval from the Secretary of Commerce. But then for approving the RHID district itself and the particular development plan, you could carve that up into different parcels. And so each building could effectively have its own term for the property tax reimbursement that RHID provides. I haven't seen a lot of communities use sort of the downtown second story approach to RHIDs, just because as a financial matter, if we're talking about the tax increment that's generated, the increase in property value from renovating a second floor to provide a living unit, there's not necessarily a lot of increase in the value that occurs there. And so I think for that reason, we haven't seen this used a lot across the state, or at least not in my experience. But I think just as a practical matter, to the question, if this were created in a downtown area, you could treat each separate building or each separate tax parcel as its own RHID kind of steamroller project.
Yeah, thank you.
And I might also add that I cannot guarantee that this is a piece of it, but I am pretty sure that when that first came out, that there was a lot of discussion around the requirements behind an RHID and access to that second floor living. Meaning, does it have to meet ADA standards? Do you have to install an elevator to make that possible? Do you have to widen the stair? All of those things that might add additional cost to that upstairs living as well. So again, don't take me for word on that, but I do believe that there was some offsetting concerns with that originally as well. All right, in the packet and on the screen, and again, this is very small types. I don't expect you to be able to read it, but we wanted to provide you a couple of years worth of history of housing incentives that while you haven't received a lot of RHID applications, you do have other housing incentives that have occurred. And this, it's not just the city input to housing incentives. There's the state and federal look at that as well. And so we tried to provide that. The middle columns there that are very light gray on the screen is what the city has provided towards those units. And I will tell you up front, everything there is basically on average, because I just took the total amount for each of those projects and divided them by the number of units, especially if you look at NRP. It might say the average amount is over $8,000, but that does not mean that each one of them got $8,000. Those are only new housing units. And then also to the right is everything that I just know of originally, but you might also note there that just because they were granted it, they may not have used the full amount, but also when you're talking about tax credits, they actually only receive a portion of that. It's not 100% credit. So where it might say 400,000, it could only be 300 and some thousand, 315 or 316 that they might receive in general for that. So again, it's just to be able to demonstrate to you that we do have some incentives. So, on those middle columns about city incentives, that ranges anywhere from $800 to $22,000. But I might note the one that's the highest there is the RHID for Prairie Fire, and I will tell you that number is not an accurate number, because while the application itself was for the $750,000, the feasibility study said likely they would only receive about half of that. And even beyond that project was paired with LIHTC, which is the low income tax credit. And that does actually require that those units are valued at market or less. They're income driven appraisals. And so they wouldn't see a lot of return on that investment early up front. So not to confuse the process, but it's a different type of RHID, and I would like to make sure that we don't confuse that with some of the future projects, because they wouldn't all be paired that way. Most of the projects that have state incentives, which actually there's all of them except for the NRP projects, range anywhere from $27,000 to $70,000 or $75,000 per unit or per door per home. And in addition to whatever the city might have provided. And the city incentive side doesn't necessarily mean that we provided a tax rebate or reimbursement, but when they apply for an MIH application to the state, the state requires or suggests that the city have some sort of skin in the game, I guess, if you will, for those applications, and that ranges anywhere from reduced tap fees or reduced permit fees or something that we've been able to offer to add to that project overall to show that we're invested in that project as well. So they do range for different types there. They're not all property tax rebates or reimbursements. With that said, Tyler, do you have anything to add here at this point in the conversation?
I don't. I think you've done a great job of summarizing both how RHID works and also what your policy goals are related to use of the tool. It's probably a good opportunity to kind of transition and see if anyone on the commission has questions or concerns or suggestions really about the use of RHID as an incentive tool. I think that was kind of where we wanted to steer things, is to provide this background, which you've just done, and see what thoughts commissioners have about it sort of moving forward, knowing that we have one or two projects and applications here in the pipeline for them to consider shortly.
Yes, I would agree.
Good question. Anybody have any more questions? Got quite a variety or in our toolbox here to be able to utilize. I'm excited about this. That housing has still always been and has been an issue in town for a long, long time, and so we need to do all we can to promote it. But I'm glad to see our progress already, and more to come. Any questions or anybody?
In addition to questions, do you have any comments or any guidance for us as far as housing incentive applications go and the types of recommendations we should be bringing back to you? That's really where we lack guidance in our policy and our process, is that we don't have any input as far as how housing incentives go, because we haven't really had a lot of conversations about just housing incentives in general.
I was thinking, Zach, did you go to the state?
Yeah, the Kansas Housing Conference.
Yeah, what you gotta tell us a little more about that?
Yep.
I know you mentioned briefly, but go
Yeah,
ahead.
that's some stuff. We actually had a breakout session about RHID upper level, because it's kind of the newer version of that, and kind of how some places are doing that to incentivize these historic downtowns specifically. Because a lot of times those have large expenses. The roofs are grand, potentially remodels get much more expensive than your traditional residential area. So for that was one thing they talked about. And then they basically have a new program. It's called the Revolving Loan Fund that just started in August. That's a kind of a tertiary funding source for all of these grants and stuff as well. And that's actually a loan process instead of grants, similar to this. But really, like Melanie had said, a big push to really stack grants was what I took from the few that I was in. There was a lot of push grant related about utilizing RHID or our NRP and MIH and multiple things as possible.
Great. Anybody else? You know, I just don't know if the general public is knowledgeable enough or knows enough about these potential programs, and I'm not sure how to inform them on what's available. If we have investors out there looking to do something, I'm guessing that most of them look at some kind of incentive to help fund their projects. But do we know? We don't know what they don't know as far as the potential goes. Are we prepared to educate them as far as City Hall if somebody comes in and they're not familiar with enough of these programs, and maybe we can then educate them if that's part of our, not necessarily our responsibility, but maybe one added flavor to the program?
You bet. And in fact, it is our responsibility, right? That is housing. That is something that we want to provide in our community. Our Lucas niece can answer questions, or we can answer them together. I'm available to answer any questions. If we can't answer those questions, we will take it to our bond counsel and get the answers that are needed. And it's a perfect time to even talk about that, because you do have your Main Street director and your FCDC director in the room, and they're probably the people that are hearing about it first, and they should absolutely direct them straight to us, and we will answer all the questions.
That's fantastic. That's good plan. Anything else on this item, anybody?
Are you looking, particularly as we've kind of got this disjointed in that we don't really have a strategy identified at this point, are you looking at us presenting applications to you for the RHID that maybe mirror at present the NRP structure, so that we're keeping kind of that benefit relatively uniform in both its approach and application, and also ensuring that any incentive received won't outpace the life cycle of the infrastructure, much of which is already pre-existing, similar to the NRP?
Any comments, anybody?
I guess, yeah, I would.
Go ahead.
In the future, I mean, I would certainly like to see that if what you're presenting is on a project bringing us both options, saying could go NRP, this could go RHID. then we kind of run the numbers from that? Or I guess what's your thought kind of in that in terms of policy?
Well,
with these
I guess
overlap?
ideally, the NRP would be within the NRP district achieving the housing outcomes that you intend them to. Where the RHID would provide those similar benefits to achieve those outcomes that are outside of the NRP. Bearing in mind that that application process is more onerous, but again, it's also outside of the area that you've marked for housing development, so.
Just think any and all that we can do. I would say on the NRP, and sometime maybe this would be the time to discuss this or not, but on the going full 10 years on 95%, I wonder if sometimes if we can visit with our builders and see how much that makes a difference if we would amend that to be more like the commercial development where 1 to 5 years, 100%, and then 50, 40, 30, 10 for a new construction. And I don't know if we're giving away too much, though it's an incentive. We want buildings, so I don't know where to go with that. But
Go ahead.
go ahead, Mayor
And
Dees.
I'd prefer not to answer that question,
Okay, that's okay.
Mayor. I think that is an important conversation, and we want to make sure that we would get that right.
Yeah, right.
But I just wanted to clarify that the NRP district, there's kind of an underlying blight finding,
Yeah.
and that's why we would not. Why staff is not currently recommending, hey, let's make all of the city within the NRP. We there's many parts of the community where it would be very difficult to make any kind of blight finding. And
Sure.
So it's for existing structure remediation and replacement, as well as infill, which we've used very effectively.
Infill, that's right. Working, right?
Do we have, if someone walks in the door, walks upstairs, brings in, they're like, hey, I just bought this building, here's my dream. Do we have essentially bond counsel that we can recommend, or not bond counsel, sorry, grant writing? Are we able to kind of connect them? Because I hear from most people that they're very unfamiliar with grants. Do we have a way to help facilitate that, either connect them to some resources that they can potentially hire, or things that we can kind of recommend for that?
We haven't had anyone ask that question, not of myself at least lately, but I would say yes, absolutely. We could try and pair them with someone. We can also give them some resources that would help them with grant writing, or there's definitely some out there that where they could get some tips on that. When you're talking about certain types of grants, for example, MIH was something that had to be a partnership with the city, so the city actually wrote the grant for MIH. But if they're applying for Kansas Housing Investor Tax Credits, they're applying on their own, but it's a fairly simple application process. So by layering things, it doesn't always take an extensive 90-page grant application to get that, but there could be. So a lot of those grants that might be available out there for some downtown businesses, or they might actually need help in that, and we're happy to work with some people to see if we can pull together some resources, at least of people that they might be able to contact for assistance with that.
Thank you.
I guess onto my comment there, I know some of the new construction homes are built with the intent of flipping or selling right away, and it would be quite an incentive to go 1 through 10 years, 95% on that to help sell the property. But I wonder if it was set up its first 5 years, kind of like commercial development, 100%, and then 50, 40, 30, 10. I would think that buyer would appreciate that, but I don't know if they're necessarily seeking full 10 years at 95.
Are you talking about an RHID applicant?
No, the NRP.
Well, NRP is already.
I mean, I don't know.
Sorry, I don't know. I wasn't really ready to run down the NRP program because this is specific to RHID. But if you're talking about pairing an RHID housing incentive to make it match somewhat the NRP, then we can look at what that looks like. And that's really what we're asking you is, would you like those to look fairly similar? But right now on the housing side of NRP, I don't believe it's structured like the commercial NRP. And I didn't include those numbers here for your
And most
review at all.
NRPs are structured with that downward stepping, whether it's like you were citing the 5 years,
Yeah.
or it's 100% for 2, and then 80 for 2, 60 for 2, on down to by year 10. That's when the property would be fully on the tax.
Well, that's what I don't want to diminish any kind of housing developments. people building homes, but at the same time, I feel like in some ways, maybe we're giving away more than we need to accomplish the same goal, is get more homes built. And I'm strictly talking about NRP here, because I'm mixing that in here with the RHID, I realize.
Sure. And, I mean, and a housing incentive is a housing incentive, right? And because they're both property tax reimbursement or rebate of some type, really the concept behind it is the same. It's just that they're a little bit different in procedure. The RHID program gives them the ability to request 25 years of reimbursement from you. That is a much longer rebate or reimbursement than you would get for other types of incentives. But ultimately, it comes down to that but-for analysis or that gap analysis to say, what do they actually need to make that project work for them? And we're using that based on criteria that we see in the market for similar types of developments in the area. So when you see those results come back to you, that's how it would be presented to you. Okay. So if someone came in, they're probably going to ask you for the max amount that they think they need in order to make that project work, and then that gap analysis will help us narrow that down to what you might want to consider. But sometimes it would help us to know, are you targeting something that's very similar, so your housing incentives are more standard across the entire community, not just in your NRP district, but outside of your NRP district. We do have quite a few developable pieces of land outside of your NRP district, and that's where the application is coming to you from. In fact, there's 2 in the works.
And I know that Director Neese and our city planner, Zach, they're working on a presentation to you regarding the available lots for infill development that are able to be looked at as a residential structure.
Okay, good.
Director Landis,
Yes.
forgive my ignorance here, but I've been a commissioner 7+ years now, and we've never had a conversation about RHID. So I'm confused about why we're having it now. Are you guys getting questions or comments from folks that are applying for RHID that you're trying to get answers from us about, even though we've never been asked questions about? So that's where I'm confused. I don't understand why we're having the conversation.
Okay, so we have developers that have come to us and said, I can do this project if I receive incentives to do it, because the cost is greater than the profit margin in the end. And in order to build the housing that you need and that your housing study has said that you need, then I would be interested in knowing what incentives you can offer me. And those developers are educated enough in the incentive world to know that RHID is an opportunity to request those incentives. And they have come to us saying, we can build this so long as we receive some sort of an RHID incentive to do so. And that's why we're bringing it to you now, because the conversations a few years ago were, hey, we'd like to build housing, but it's too expensive. Now it's, hey, we'd like to build housing. We really want to be here. We're going to do it, or we want to do it, but we really need your help getting there, because the cost of materials have gone up, the cost of interest rates have gone up, all of those things. So if you'd like to see that housing here, we'd love to have that conversation about what types of incentives can you offer us. And those are the conversations that we're getting from them. So it's not necessarily us saying, hey, would you like to do housing here? We have some incentives to offer. Those aren't the conversations that are happening at all. But it's definitely them approaching us about this type of incentive specifically.
So you're hearing that folks may want to build here, there's just not enough incentive for them to build here.
Yes. So those profit margins are slimmer. What we hear is those profit margins are slimmer in an area like Ottawa as opposed to the metro area, where they might be able to obtain higher rents or higher sales prices for those same homes.
I don't disagree, but I also build houses too, and there's a pretty significant profit margin. I just don't think.
Commissioner, if I
Please.
In the absence of having a more direct policy, they're going to ask for 25 years, which means that the incentive in all likelihood will only begin to start to pay for itself, not just for the services used, but for the infrastructure that by that point could have potentially already been replaced year 20 or will soon be replaced. So they will have had a full use of asset without actually contributing to those portions. So one of the things that we as staff do is do comparables for both our city real estate and our regional, and then determine within that whole but-for analysis that you'll become very familiar with. But we have to begin that at the staff level, which is very time intensive of all of your key folks, because we lack that direction. So they're going to go ahead and ask for the full amount rather than a directed amount that we know would put them kind of where you said, without actually saying where you would like to be, but also B, that, you know, when we do this back of the envelope, because we want to make sure that the information, the data that we give you, or that we're even the path we're going down when a project is under conception, that it's accurate. In other words, that we're in the zone, we're in the ballpark, and then we'll just get it massaged as we get into that. But it's a battle if we have to start at year 25 to work down to year 10.
And the Prairie Fire was a 15-year. Is that when I'm reading this right?
It was.
The 15. And so that seemed to work, as it's working now still. So 25 seems to be quite excessive. But so you're asking should we set some kind of limit here to be 15 or 20 years, or to be negotiable rather than 25?
Or to reflect the same framework as the NRP, and if the NRP changes, then we understand that the other policies that are trying to achieve similar type of results, although, you know, one is for blight and the other's for more generic development, but it's still part and parcel to the direction that you want to give. And in theory, not saying in practice, but the economic development books would say then that you should be incentivizing more infill than new. But again, that's why when we were developing the summary of incentives, that we're able to even go more detailed than this, but this is a good summary. That's why we have the per unit average, is that gives you a general finger in the wind as far as, which is on the far right column of what Director Landis has presented on slide 11B for analysis, summary of housing incentives as of September of 24. So if we understand that, at least for now, particularly as we've kind of got the cart before the horse, and it's no one's fault, it's not staff's, it's not the developers, it's just, you know, they would like to do some infill within an existing area in one of their existing developments, and they have the opportunity to request this, and we're happy to encourage and foster development, so long as we understand all the numbers and the decision framework that we're representing to you, so that you understand what you're doing and that you're comfortable either giving something or not giving something, and why.
And I'm guessing most of the infill is going to be in the NRP geographic lines.
Not necessarily. We have lots of developable lots that are within the city of Ottawa that have current public infrastructure that do not live within your NRP district.
Okay. Well, anybody have any more comments or ideas or questions?
I do think as we kind of were talking length terms, typically, as you had mentioned, RHID is used for more of an expanse, not a single home, where kind of the purpose of RHID is a single home for homeowner or investor, whoever that may be, where this would potentially be a true, almost like a subdivision, where you would have a lot of underground utility work, sunk costs like that, prior to having parcels to build on.
You might. The policy, your policy as it exists right now says it has to be more than 10 renter occupied units. But it could be, remember, we have the 3 different ways that you can use RHID now. So it could be something that requires a bunch of upfront public infrastructure. Or if that infrastructure has been in place for more than 10 years, it could be the actual vertical construction of the homes themselves.
Okay. Do you need anything more from us? I mean, you've kind of got general ideas here to work from, but you need something more specific?
We have a tentative schedule to bring back to you the request for the accepting the findings for this RID application, and then we'll bring back to you some incentive discussion and proceed from there. If that's okay.
The consensus is for us to bring back something that mirrors the same benefit as the NRP, or to just bring back what's presented,
Commission, having
or as the full application.
Okay. Anybody have any suggestion on that?
I guess at this point, I'm not willing to make any kind of consensus.
Until we get more information.
Okay.
That's
All right.
That's fair. And to expand just a little bit on what Mr. Sokot said, so it would be their original request, but also the but-for and the gap analysis, so that you can see what that actually provides, because that's really where you want to start a conversation, is what is needed as opposed to what's been requested.
All right, let's do that.
Okay,
Good.
thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to item C.
Winter Assistance Program.
Assistant Director McCurdy will present on the annual winter assistance program offered by the City of Ottawa's electric utility.
Good evening. All right, today we're just doing a little receipt and file information. I obviously will be here to answer questions as well, but I want to talk about our Winter Assistance Program. So this program was set in place in 2013 by resolution. It's actually, the resolution is Winter Warmth Assistance Program, but we have shortened it over time. Just a little program summary for those of you who are not familiar with it. Participants of the program receive a reduction of up to 50% of their monthly electric use charges on their utility bill, not to exceed $75 per billing cycle for the 4 months of December, January, February, and March, with a maximum assistance per utility count of $300. And they have to meet all qualifications to be a participant. The qualifications for the program are to be a recipient of Social Security benefits or veterans benefits, and to receive state food assistance. One of the requirements for state food assistance is the combined household income before deductions of all people living at the residence, that they may not exceed 130% of the federal poverty income level. They also have to fill out an application with us. The application has to be name on the utility account, and they have to be current on their account, and all of this has to happen prior to December 1st each year. Some program statistics for you, because you all know I love numbers. In 22, we helped 81 individual accounts. In 23, there were 77. I have the total dollars of assistance given each year. You do see a decline in there with an average assistance. I just took the total number divided by the number of accounts. I did set some goals for my staff this year to increase participation in this program, mostly because I feel like most of the individuals who sit at the front counter who really struggle, if they meet these qualifications, they probably just don't know that they could be getting assistance. So we're posting flyers and applications at City Hall. We called the Area Agency on Aging, Hope House, ECAN, and the DCF office. I've got those all packaged up. My staff also mailed out approximately 75 applications to people who participated last year who still live here in town, even if they moved addresses. Financially, this program is funded through the electric fund. There is an expense line that is hit with the deduction, and I listed the line for you guys. So because December, January, February, March, wrap around 2 different years, you'll see it the beginning of the year, at the end of the year, hit the expense line. So this year we've already used just a little over $10,000 in the $22,000 budget, which is the same amount that is budgeted for 25, which leaves us $11,800 remaining in that budget for this year. And I just wanted to bring this to your attention and the public's attention today, take a moment to talk about it, and hope that you will all share it with anyone you know that would be eligible for the program. And with that, I will answer any questions.
I know there's some kind of restriction, is it state or not, that we cannot disconnect people when the temperature turns a certain
So we have a warm weather and a cold weather
both.
policy.
Okay.
So in the winter, we do not disconnect electric if it's below freezing for so many days.
Okay.
That being for non-payment. Obviously, if you come in and you tell us to disconnect your service because you're leaving,
Sure.
we do as you request. Both of those policies are posted on our website. We check the national weather website every day. We save it for reference that we've done our job, and we do adhere to those. Now, often people will hear on the news the rule by, I'm going to get the acronym wrong, but it's like the Kansas Commission for Utilities, or it's KCUCC or something. I'm saying that wrong. I know I am.
That's right.
We don't actually fall under that jurisdiction because we are independently owned, but our policy mirrors theirs. So while it's not the exact same, it's very similar. That being said, people can always call and ask questions. My staff have the policies at their desks. They're happy to talk it through with people. Sure. Usually, if people are in that situation, we also help them direct them to these same organizations we will be providing this information to. And all of those staff are wonderful people that do enjoy helping those in the need. So
Well, I think it's important that the people know about this program, and that I think it's good that they pay something. I mean, nothing's free in this world, I guess. And so I feel like it's important that they do at least pay a portion of it if they can't pay it all. It's a good program. I think great way. Participation improves too. So good.
yeah, we've already received one application. So there are people who know when it opens and when it's due. So
Good.
Yeah.
Anybody have more questions on this one?
2 more for you, and you can definitely just say a hard no if it's that crazy. Have we looked at, like similar to Kansas Gas, like doing like an even pay for a year to kind of level some of these increased? Is that
we have an average monthly plan.
okay?
So you can sign up for that.
Okay.
We call it AMP. And it's a rolling 12-month plan. So it's not a flat like, oh, I sign up and I'm paying $200 a month. It rolls with your usage. So it might go up or down about $20, $25, depends. But it does level out your payment throughout the year. And so occasionally when people get that really high summer bill, which is right now, September is actually usually people's highest bills. We're sorry. But we can sign you up for that. And we can tell you what your average is. And so there are people who do get on that and it really helps them out. You're probably also referring to Kansas Gas has a policy about like they'll take one whole bill and split it up. We don't have a policy like that currently, only because adding that contract to your bill then makes your bill that much higher for the rest of the year. So averaging it is a little bit easier than adding just for simplicity's sake, a $1,200 bill that adds an extra $100 for the whole year. Versus if we just average it, and your average is $300 or around there, that's a lot easier to know going forward.
Perfect. So do people just call? They can do that online. They can call.
There's
down.
an app online that you can fill out and email us, or you can fill it out in person. Yeah.
And then second question on that: is it possible? I know similar to Kansas Gas, I'm just utilizing them. They have an option of share the warmth. So I can tell them to round my bill every month up. I think it rounds it to the next dollar or something, and it utilizes that for funds. Would there be any way to?
So you're talking about
you
donate money? Is that what you're saying to help other people?
Checkout that I can add $5 my utility payment to go into this fund to fund more people.
We don't currently do that. I will say there is a few churches that do usually around Christmas time donations that they gather from their congregation and they bring it in. And we have a donation line that we put that on, so it shows as a liability in the account in our ledger. And I work with ECAN, and they determine the eligibility for that. So then it's, an unbiased approach. They know the funds are there. I send them usually monthly where the line is at because we receive donations and they use them throughout the year. So when we direct people to ECAN, sometimes I'll have somebody that I think that they're at the window and they're like, well, I don't meet the income requirements. So I tell them to go to ECAN. I email ECAN, I say, I referred this person to you. Don't forget about your donation line. But they have to do the work. They have to go to ECAN and fill out the application. And ECAN also gets assistance from like Salvation Army and things. And so it's really nice to put somebody with ECAN or Hope House, because usually if they're struggling with their utility bill, it's not just their utility bill. And so they don't know about other resources that might be out there, which is one of the reasons why we really refer them out, so they can find all the resources for all of their needs.
Thank you.
Well, Commissioner Clayton, if it makes you feel better, it actually is set up that way. I mean, because you pay your electric bill, which then goes into the electric fund, which then the electric fund does, help pay for that. So in a roundabout way, we do have a program similar to that.
That's a
That's okay.
good answer.
I was awake for that one.
I'm not necessarily looking for dive down deep details, but out of the 77 individuals or the 77 households that applied, how many of those applied in previous years too? And what's our return rate?
I know that, but most likely, I mean, like I told you, that why we already had one come in and we just put out applications this week. So they're obviously really on it. I would say it's pretty high. Usually, I mean, we mailed out the 75 applications. Those were the people that applied last year that still live in our community. I would argue I'm going to get 98% of them back. All right, thank you.
Any more questions?
Similar to that, do you, for lack of a better term, frequent flyers, people who have done it multiple years, do we give that list to ECAN for, I know they have a weatherization program, some stuff to potentially get them in the right direction for the next few years, if they have some needs in terms of that?
No, we don't usually share, we do not share customer information out unless they, like I say, I'm going to refer you to ECAN, is that okay, at the window. That being said, I do have, we have weatherization information at the counter. We have the list of those organizations. We even have a list of landlords that the chamber put together that we gladly give out to people. So,
Any more questions? Good program. Rebecca, thank you. Good report. Move on to item D.
City Hall Commission Room Modernization Design Firm Selection of Request for Qualifications.
Request for approval to select Goldberg Group Architects to provide design services for the City Hall Commission Room Modernization Project following the RFQ process.
So good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. You're somewhat familiar with this. We've talked about it before. We did have the RFQ that we put out that closed on September 13th. We were looking for design firms that could help us this modernization or upgrades in this room. We thought it was important to bring you a design firm instead of a finished design, because we want your input to kind of build this out. We did receive one packet, and that was from the Goldberg Group Architects. And even though it was just the one packet, when we checked out, they had a good packet, and I followed up personally on the references that they mentioned, and really incredible references from some of the previous projects that they've worked on around the area. And as far as, so the qualifications were there, the references were great, the design costs fit into the 10% kind of bucket that we had anticipated design cost might cost for a project like this. This is going from ARPA funds, and so the whole project together is $250,000. Their design costs were $26,200. Obviously no contracts have been signed yet. We would have the city attorney look at any contracts before moving forward with anything, but that's what we're requesting today, is for selection of the Goldberg Group Architects for the design services for this project. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I do think this is I like the design, and I think We've talked about like a crescent moon shape here. I feel like somebody that's like a Supreme Court or like the Wizard of Oz for people to come talk to us. I think it may be somewhat intimidating to have a panel like this, whereas we have a semicircle. It does promote discussion. I know Commissioner Kaler brought that up a long time ago, and I agree. It does kind of hinder it a little bit when we have to back up and look at each other from the side of the head. But I think this is a good proposal myself, and I appreciate you checking out the references. That's an important point.
Paul, do you know if the firm has done any other commission chambers?
I know they've done some courtrooms. I'm not sure about specifically commission chambers like this.
They have a list of their qualifications in their letter and projects that they've done. Trying to find the page.
Please.
Okay, I'm just way off.
Sydney is here.
Come on up. Yeah,
Look at that. Then hey,
She knows the answer
I was
to
like,
that
I can
question.
find it.
Hello, I'm Sydney Goldberg. Good afternoon, everybody. So I have the joy of managing Goldberg Group Architects. Yes, we have done other commission chambers, primarily county commissions actually, but a variety of just public sector work. So I know just in reading the RFQ, it's important to you all to be involved in that process and have a say, which is what we want. We love, the communities we work with. I was so honored to hear, all of our references. We're so positive because we really do love the people we get to work with. You all are so invested in where you live and what you're doing here. We're excited to, for the opportunity, I should say, just to partner and find a solution for you guys. It's an exciting project. But yes, absolutely, we've worked with other similar groups.
It's good to hear that. I'm in construction, so as you have more projects under your belt, you learn from your mistakes, before. So we certainly want every dollar spent, in a positive way, and want to avoid some of those mistakes that maybe folks prior have made.
Absolutely. And even in terms of just transparency throughout the whole process, like you said, to make sure every dollar goes, is used to the best of our ability. And that includes just long-term maintenance. That's huge in the public sector, right? You guys live with these projects for a very long time. And so the maintenance, making sure that we're getting good multiple bids in different subcontracting categories so that you all have options. I mean, we are fortunate, again, to have worked with a lot of communities in the area. And so I think we'll be able to push that out to a lot of people, but also working with people like you, Commissioner Crawley, who, can just spread the word locally, doing some pre-bid meetings.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions? I guess not.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Commissioner.
I move that we approve the modernization design firm selection as listed in our agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second right here. I think you got jumped ahead of Zach here. Okay.
Sorry, Zach.
Any other discussion on this? And just one question, I guess, and I assume you have a site person taking care of when the construction process. I know you're in St. Joseph, I guess. Is that right? So you're about 2
we
hours
have an
away.
office in KC as well, so it's about 50 minutes away.
Okay.
We'll be on site often though, because the timeline that was laid out is also just quick. I mean, we'll need to be here.
Yeah.
Also, coincidentally, just ties in well with our other projects. We're in the area all the time. We're working in Osage County and Coffee County right now.
Okay.
So yes, we'll be on site quite a bit.
Fantastic. I wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on this? If not, let's take a roll call vote, please.
How do you vote, Mayor Pro Tem Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
And Mayor Skidmore?
I vote yes too. That motion carries. So thank you, Sydney, for being here.
Yeah.
Paul, thank you.
Thank you all so much for the opportunity. So we'll be in touch with you, Mr. Finch, and talk about some contract details.
Sounds good.
It was really nice to meet you all.
All right, ladies,
Lovely
thank you for
meeting you.
both being here. Thank you all. Great. We'll move on to item E, looks like.
Review transient guest tax revenue scenarios ranging from 3% to 6%.
City Manager Slocott will review the various revenue scenarios for the transient guest tax, exploring potential outcomes and financial impacts of implementing the tax. In addition to these scenarios, a charter ordinance will be presented that creates the authority but not the obligation to levy a transient guest tax in an amount not to exceed the statutory limit of 9%. City Manager Slocott.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Commissioners. Again, this is the first step of a two-step process should you desire to proceed with the levying of a transient guest tax. My apologies. To that end, the first step would be this charter ordinance. And the reason it's listed at 9% is that is the statutory limit. And then you would essentially adopt the second aspect in a simple ordinance at a future meeting to establish that rate. That consideration would occur after a 61-day process, at which time, because it's a charter ordinance, if no official protest petition had been duly filed with the county clerk, then at that time we would proceed with the consideration, and that's where the actual rate would be determined. Historically, we previously discussed this on February 14th and again on February 21st, and the first charter ordinance failed. It was originally for review and comment and discussion, and I think with that, throughout our budget process, it was determined that this would want to be revisited at some form. And so with that, we're here today. Franklin County levies a 6% transient guest tax in place since 2004. Again, what I had just outlined, charter ordinance is the first step, with the simple ordinance being the second step. And then once that simple ordinance is adopted, Department of Revenue is notified, and the simple ordinance notification then entails the collection beginning on the first day of the following month after Department of Revenue receives that notification. And I think what you're really interested in, and I have this in the agenda report, which is outlining what would this generate. Now you'll notice that you'll see references throughout of July 1st through June 30th, and that's because these revenues are collected and reported on the state of Kansas fiscal year. So that is the window, and currently by the state of Kansas fiscal year, we're in year 2025. And so that shows the amount of revenue that has been collected to date. One item of note is that with the change in ownership of the Holiday Inn, the reported as well as the collected transient guest tax will lag, because there is a window with which they will not withhold distribution, but that they can retain those amounts until they're able to then submit them to the Department of Revenue. And so what we'll see is we'll see a decrease, and then all of a sudden you're going to see a big pop. And I believe Director Landis said they have a year to do that, or what's that exact window?
They're just on an annual reporting basis now. So at the end of the year, they'll report, and then within the first couple of months of the year, we should come in. Then they will go back to monthly reporting.
So that would explain why year to date, knowing that even starting July 1st, we're approaching October, and why those numbers are as low as they are. But what we've done is, starting at the 6%, which is the county levy, showing last year's collections by the Department of Revenue, down to what 1% would generate with last year's collections. Do you have any questions regarding the numbers or the data? I also provided kind of some direct links to the state's information page and the actual reports themselves.
Well, I guess I got a question. So the city could go up to 9% regardless of what the county's collecting?
That is correct. But that's the statutory limit. You can't exceed.
Okay, so that's why, but okay, the recommendation City Hall is somewhere between 3 and 6. So is that
correct?
My understanding, and today we don't necessarily decide the amount. We just need to give you direction.
If you want to deliberate it at a future date and consider adoption. Now, one thing to consider is the calendar. If you were to want to start collecting some rate effective January 1. that would mean that we would need to consider something on or around the either this meeting or next meeting in order to safely
Okay. Well, I know
capture
last
that.
time, and I got this information from you all, I believe, talking about the counties, what they currently charge in the cities. And I'm trying to study this a little bit, and maybe it's changed. Maybe it would be a good idea to look this over again, so everybody has a chance to see, like Abilene, what do they charge, and then of course they're in Dickinson County, what does the county charge? If some counties do charge, some don't, so we can get a good idea. Because I think like right now Topeka's showing 14% total. I'm talking total everything, and Coffee County and Emporia, different ones, and it might be good to have that information if it's changed at all. I don't know if it has or not. If we can find out. Are other cities looking at changing it or adopting it? We don't know, I guess, since back in February when we last did that. If it hadn't changed, maybe I need to get that out to all the commissioners again so they can have that to review to decide we want 3, we want 4, we want 5, we want 6. I don't know. Commissioners, any comments?
If the charter ordinance is passed, what does it take for us to move within that tax rate? Like if we were to decide,
a simple ordinance, and then it would take effect upon publication in the paper of record. So the rate's adjustable annually or monthly, if weekly, whatever, just
Jeez.
that
the state's gonna
publication.
love us if we do that.
Right. So then there may be changes to the statute at some point, but yeah, it's designed to be nimble and to not tie the hands of any future governing body. Hence the max at the statutory limit is the inclusion in the charter ordinance the way Attorney Finch has drafted it.
Any other comments or questions?
I just want to say, I appreciate the numbers that you put together. I think it really does help because for some reason in my mind, even 3% wasn't going to be near that much revenue. So I think it's really helpful to see those numbers and to think on those. But I do think this would give us a lot more ability to help some of our community partners and do some different things with this that would benefit the community.
It certainly would be a funding mechanism for many of the strategic initiatives that you have pointed out, or at least monies that are going there now with general dollars could be reallocated to infrastructure or, quality of life, whatever you would want, because that would free up a portion of those funds.
Definitely right.
So I want to make sure I understand. The charter ordinance that we have here doesn't necessarily lock us into a specific tax rate. It locks us into having the putting it in place, and then the specific, because it says up to the rate of 9%. Nowhere does it say 3%, 5%, 1%. It just says we're establishing this.
If you were to adopt it today, that gives you, first of all, a 61-day period with which the public could protest. But at the end of the day, it's giving you the ability through a future simple ordinal action to levy whatever rate is desired, but not the obligation to do so. So you could give yourself the authorization and the ability to levy it, but not take action until the time and place of your choosing.
So I appreciate that you outlined that. So even if we were to vote this in today, we aren't voting in for a specific tax rate. We aren't even voting in to put it in place at all. We're just giving kind of the vehicle for it to happen.
That's correct.
Yes.
Good. That's a good point.
Okay.
Yeah. Is there someone who wants to make a motion on this, or you want to defer this on to another time?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner,
I'll make the motion to approve item 11E as listed in the agenda.
is there a second? on
I'll
that?
second.
There's a second, Sarah. Got it? All right. Any other discussion on this? If not, let's take a roll call vote on this, please.
How do you vote, Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton?
Yes.
And Mayor Skidmore?
I'll vote yes, too. That motion carries. Thanks, Brian. Good job. Next item would be F.
JPM Agreement Golf Course for December 30th, 2024 termination.
City Manager Silcott will present the termination agreement with JPM regarding the golf course set for December 30, 2024, outlining the terms and any related impacts on operations and future plans for the facility.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Commissioners. Now, what this is doing is, as we discussed during our numerous budget discussions throughout the year, and particularly as it related to the Special Parks and Rec Fund and the budget amendment period, as well as the actual structure of this prior to my arrival, is that you were approached in August of 2022 to purchase the golf course, and in November of that year, you proceeded forward with that at a total purchase price of $288,000, and then part of the condition of that was that from the country club to the city was that the request was that you utilize the existing lease with JPM Enterprises to operate the course, which is set to expire on March 31st of 2026. So through much discussion, and the discussions were led by City Attorney Finch and in conjunction with Director Landis and myself, we were able to come to terms that affected, based upon your direction for assuming responsibility sooner rather than later so that we could begin the process for course improvements and trying our best to enhance the customer and user experience. So that effective December 30th of this year is when that would essentially amend the current lease agreement to transfer those operations fully to the city and entirely to the city. Because right now you're the owner, you're just not the operator. And what we've done with this is, again, based upon input and just, if I were on the other side, the golden rule, how would I want to be treated? Honoring the 2024 memberships that are currently purchased through the first quarter of this year, which is when the original lease agreement was to essentially start a new year in that agreement. So we would essentially give them 3 months, which is the winter season. But as you know, it's not unusual to have a spate of, 3 to 5 70-degree days in February. So, those could be utilized at honoring the existing memberships. And then the current operators will provide that information to us. Now, why are they doing that? First of all, that helps us understand who's currently utilizing the facilities, but also our engagement process with existing customers, because that's going to be important that we communicate not only with you, our elected officials, but also the users that are there and are the reason for that service being provided to our taxpayers and to our neighbors and fellow community members, but also to the public at large. So that will allow us to provide a letter that will then give us a glide path to communicate to them as far as the actions that are undertaken, because I know there's currently an operations list, which we'll get into later, that's over 20 items long already. So the vendor payments, JPM's responsible for all of the bills incurred up to that point of December 30th, 2024, as well as the property taxes for that window. And then there's an existing tenant there that's utilizing the kitchen area, and we'll work with them, for continued operation of that, again, in good faith. Yes, ma'am.
What about the existing tenant that's living there?
No. That will no longer be part and parcel to that. It's the business that's the caterer.
That'll be the end of the year or the end of March when they're gone.
It would be effective December 30th.
Okay, got it.
So by the end of the year. So these are some of the items that we're taking, and you'll see that in your analysis portion, is again highlighting the actions that the governing body's taken up to this point. And these are just the high points. This doesn't go back prior to. And then the next steps that we're looking at, which include, again, hiring a golf pro before the end of the year and having them on board, which Director Landis and a member of her team has already started that process. And then also hiring a golf course superintendent, which would be the turf manager for the grounds and the physical condition of the course. And then also preparations for membership communication and lease agreements for the point of sale. And we would be looking to make that uniform throughout the city organization. So any facility that used it would, if at all possible, we'd be utilizing the same point of sale system. And then the golf court lease agreement, which would include not only our day-to-day in the set number of courses, but also accounting for the ability to bring in additional carts so that the course can host events. And then, sorry, I keep going the wrong way here. One thing to note is we've had the, again, Special Parks and Rec Fund with $135,321. And then we have the Golf Course Fund that was established, and then budget amendments that were affected in August of this year. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Sorry. There's tape on here and it's kind of thrown me. Legal considerations, again, this agreement was drafted and negotiated by City Attorney Finch, who approves not only of its content but to form. And do you have any questions for Director Landis or I, or Attorney Finch, who's online and via Zoom?
Any questions?
Do one question. It's not specific, I guess, on the ordinance, or not on the ordinance, on the lease amendment. We have somewhere kind of planned out. I know in here it shows hiring a golf pro general manager and a course superintendent. What roughly those two positions will take from that budget next year alone? Just
yeah, I'll let Director Landis answer, but yes, we do know that.
Okay.
I'm hesitant to give you an exact number simply because I don't have that in front of me, but we've been working with someone from the PGA recruiting office, as well as we've contacted the Superintendent Association to get a better idea of what those going rates are for the area. And so we're putting together the actual advertisements now. Your HR director is really working hard on the job description and putting together what that package might look like for both jobs. And so I would say as we get closer to we could definitely bring those first to you before we put that out there, if that would.
And is there consideration of an LPGA pro?
She would technically be with the PGA. Yes.
Okay.
The L's can work with the PGA, I'm telling you.
Which
we can.
As a former member of Rolling Hills in Wichita, I can tell you that that is where the LPGA was initially conceived, formed, and the first round of bylaws written in Wichita, Kansas.
My goodness. There you go.
And
it's a mystery.
Do we have, I know we've talked about this a few times about getting a board set up for the golf course, because we have
at this point
so many
we're
folks, I think, interested in being a part
correct,
of that.
but I think what we're envisioning at this point is more of a direct dialogue with the users directly rather than through a board at this stage, because we have much. We've got right now an active list of 20 action items that we need to undertake. And then once it's up and operational, we can, at that point, assess how that might be. I mean, at this stage, we need to focus on improvements and making those improvements in operations smooth, and doing that through direct customer engagement, I think would be the most appropriate. Go ahead.
We are actually working on developing a survey that we could send out to current patrons and users of the course to get some feedback from them, so that as we transition operations, we know we're at least hitting the high points up front, and then putting together the rest of the plan beyond that, helpful for other.
Good idea.
Which is why that member stakeholder engagement is vital. Both not only for the folks that use it regularly, but event participants as well, because it's going to be, we'll be eating the elephant a bite at a time just to keep it within
fiscal constraints.
That's good. Any more questions on this? If not, I'll entertain a motion if there is one for item F.
So moved.
There a second?
I'll second.
There's a second. Any other discussion on this? If not, let's take a roll call vote, please.
How do you vote, Mayor Pro Tem Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton?
Yes.
Commissioner Kaler?
Yes.
Commissioner Crowley?
Yes.
And Mayor Skidmore.
I vote yes too. That motion carries, and I think it is important that we continue to have this amenity in our community, and I'm glad to see us all go for this. So thank you all for the work you put into to make this happen. So, well, move on to project updates. Just review the current projects and updates from the last 30 days. Brian, take it.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and Commissioners. This is just a brief overview of our current active projects. I don't know why I'm doing that. But we will start with, because I'm holding it upside down, with the list of upcoming and completed projects. So we still have these items outstanding, which are from the 2022, which is the OMA boiler and the HVAC system here at City Hall. And then want to remind you that we are still active on our three-phase AMI metering that was approved in a recent meeting, and then our community vision plan, which I'm going to give you an update on in 2 meetings, as well as what that glide path will be. And we've modified and delayed the RFP distribution so that we could incorporate an aspect of strategic alignment with those firms that would be replying, so that they would be able to help us at the organizational level facilitate that interaction directly into our ongoing operations. And then we have our completed projects to date, which is the Law Enforcement Training Center. And that was, again, with ARPA funds, City Hall security improvements, also with ARPA funds, the power quality circuit study, which was for 8 and 10, that allowed us to split that off and give a dedicated line to the northeast substation, and to identify the fusing and routing for particularly on circuit 8, and then to serve the 160 some commercial customers that are existing on circuit 10. The K68 traffic study was completed and reported to you in June of this year. We got our lift station, the water line replacement along Elm, our taxiway reconstruction and design, which I hope to have an update for you very soon. In that, we were waiting for FAA communication to head our way. And then, of course, our much anticipated splash pad and the base grant, which you had recently approved the modification for a reduction in the overall cost for that. And then the Mulberry and Dundee intersection. So with that, just to recount here, the 2022 issuances, as a large number of these are ARPA funds. So just kind of want to delineate the 2022 versus the ARPA. And you can see now that Fall Festival's over, and our crews, whose focus has been on cleaning up our community corridors and the aesthetics and sprucing up our thoroughfares. They'll begin work again on our playground here. That was initially delayed with some weather issues, and then workload with preparation for Power of the Past and the car show. Proximity Park Water Tower. What we have had completed in this last 30-day period was site grading, which is new over when I visited with you last about this project. And then we're still working on the pump station upgrade. And what we hope to have completed here in the next 30 days is the ground restoration around that, and the final installation of the fence, and then begin working on screening and greening. The project for the standby power for the raw water pump is still, again, in a holding pattern as we're awaiting the arrival of equipment. But what we are looking forward to is moving forward. The water reclamation, this is the Pen Oak lift station, and you can see that it had reached its useful life cycle and was originally programmed for 2025. However, we were able to create some savings by utilizing existing fund balance to front run this and keep our sewer customers' rates lower because we were able to generate some of that savings for this needed project that had reached the end of its useful life. And then our single phase AMI meters, you'll see that, again, we're in the hurry up and wait mode for that, and we're expecting them to arrive middle of first quarter of 2025. The water treatment plant study, that's been finalized recently, and so we're hoping to have that ready to provide an overview and what that was, and that'll go into our strategic document file, and you'll begin to see aspects of this by eating the elephant a bite at a time when we start to have capital discussions early next year. You had acted previously on the Commission Chambers modernization, which includes not only the physical layout, but the tech upgrades to make this more conducive for online streaming and viewing from home, as that's the new reality.
Mr. Silcott?
Yes, sir.
So on this item here, I know on prior updates we've had discussions. It mentioned that the process was supposed to start in fall. Certainly that hasn't happened. Do we have an updated timeline of when that will happen? And I know we just chose the firm to do that.
And we have an aggressive time schedule for that. So we would like to have it brought to you and online late November, early December at the latest, I would say.
Thank you.
Did you have additional comments?
That the process to, and I know that.
Well, this is the design process, not the construction, right?
This actually encompasses the entire project, the 250.
Oh, this does. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. So I believe that Paul has the actual timeline, but I was thinking that it was pulling it all together with final completion of the entire project early in the next year.
So we'll have the design identified and ready to proceed in tail end of this year. Okay. I want to make sure we answer the question appropriately.
Very good.
And I might add there, so because those are ARPA funds, the way that we proceed if something is not going to be completed prior to December 31st, 2024, is that you have to be engaged. So all of the discussion with you to complete that design, turn around and bid the construction, all has to happen, especially with a construction contract in place prior to December 31, to engage us in the spending of those funds, and then the remainder of the project can finish after that. But I believe even the end of that was scheduled for March. Is that right? At the very latest.
It says the contract duration is not less, or is not to exceed 120 days. Once we enter, I mean, at least that's what in the document it says on page 104 from the RF.
On the RFP, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The RFQ says.
All right, thank you. Q.
So, like the first quarter of next year. All right. Any other questions of Brian? We'll go right on to our comments by city manager.
I want to remind everyone to complete our lead and copper surveys. We kind of passive aggressive with it, but we're running out of time and we still need folks to comply, and that will help us in not only our needs assessment, but then how we may proceed with approaching this. And I know we'll have a report for you here before the end of the year on how we're going to not only educate and engage the public, but begin the process of mitigating this. Although we shouldn't have a significant risk to the community with this because of the type of water that we have and the type of lines that we have. In other words, it's not the hard water that doesn't tend to adhere to those lines that would then subsequently be broken loose, where the harder water and the chemical composition of the harder water tends to create those issues in older housing than the newer. But it's still something that we have to comply with, and there's no separation of cities that may be more at risk versus less at risk, and we're in the less at risk category versus the most at risk. And I know Assistant Director Sneathen can provide an update on that if you have any questions related to our response and anticipated response, or issues related to that lead and copper pipe.
I guess, do we know which ones have not sent in their information, or is it a matter of still relying on? Okay, we'll hopefully get.
Yeah, you can come up, Scott.
Is there a certain, and again, if there's a certain percent we've got to have to be able to comply with EPA?
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
Commissioners, thank you. At this time, I would say we've probably got roughly 5% surveys back within the community, which is obviously fairly low. We have a deadline of October 16th to send our full spreadsheet full of every address and what they have to the state. Now, with that being said, we don't have to know. We don't have to go knock on doors and say, what do you have? We need to come in and find it. What happens at that point is, for every unknown service that we have in our community, we have to send a brochure or a pamphlet to them that says, hey, this is what we need. And at that time, we have to do investigations at that time, or they send in the information that we need. But that goes against us, as an unknown line acts just the same as a lead line. So as a city, on our side of the meter, we are assuming that we have 0 lead lines within the city, just due to advancements in water lines, installation of new lines, replacing the old lines in town. That's pretty good information that we have, but we don't have a lot of information from our customers.
From the meter to the house, and then the house to
The difference is.
the house into your faucet.
And so what are the consequences if we maintain this 5% response rate?
At this time, our consequences, we have to do more investigation.
Cost us a lot more money
Yes,
to get
it's
put together.
in the long run, it's going to cost us time. We don't want to have to go to different places within town and bore down a hole and try to find out what that material line is.
Yeah. So I guess we need to inform the people as much in the best way we can, where we don't want to waste their taxpayer dollars. That's one of the things they complain about more than anything, is that we're spending too much money here, and yet here's an opportunity for them to save some money if they would respond. So we've put this out like our webpage or Facebook and all the different ways to notify people what's needed and why we need it and how to report it. Like you said, it only takes a minute or two. I mean, it didn't take me very long. I guess you got mine, didn't you? Yeah. Okay, thanks. But I want to make sure everybody knows how important this is.
Well, Mayor Skidmore, this is how long it takes. When you started your comments, I got on the city's website and I did mine, and mine's done.
See, there
So
you go.
that's how long it took.
Thank you for the good
So,
example.
Thank you.
It takes little of no time, because I knew the second Scott was walking up, I was like, oh, I haven't done mine. I know I haven't done mine. So I'm going to see how long it takes.
No,
And
we're
it's
good.
literally on the city's website. You can go up on the city's website and it says, take the water line survey, and it takes less than 2 minutes.
See,
And there have been a number of citizens that we have gone out to their homes, and they've let us in and said, we need help. We don't know how to do this. And guess what? We're crawling under crawl spaces. We're going into basements. We're doing the testing for them. So if there are citizens out there that are listening that say, hey, I need to do this, call us. Call us at the water plant. 785-229-3690. Set up a time to where we can come out and and get this survey completed for you, because it's only going to help us in the long run.
This is 3699 on this form here, that'd be the same.
That is our water treatment plant superintendent, Mark Higgs' direct line. So
I see.
he is a great option to call.
Resource for that.
Yep.
Good to hear. All
But
right.
we asked the folks to call the main line and not.
Yeah. Fair
So
enough. Good.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
And the next item, I just want to highlight the calendar going into the year end and note that we've got some fifth meetings here for October. We've got a day before Thanksgiving holiday on the 27th. So we're going to try and keep both of these light, but we're not going to defer any action that's not, that's obviously necessary for us to take action on. But particularly on the 27th here, we're going to try and avoid having that meeting if we can, but we're not going to defer anything that needs to be addressed if that's the case. And then to highlight, Christmas this year falls on Wednesday, as does New Year's Day. So we may have a heavy 18th or need to have a special meeting in between here at some point, as the 8th would be the next day with which we would have a regular commission meeting. And then want to ask everyone, if you're interested in spooks and goblins and ghost stories, to consider buying some tickets to the Memorial Auditorium's Stage Fright and Ghost Hunt. Just give you some updates from work around the city. You can see that we had our disc golf baskets reinstalled at Forest Park by our Public Works crews. We got our Hidden Lakes electric line extension and right-of-way maintenance upkeep by our street department. Another image of the Hidden Lakes extension and 15th Street. We had some glitches with our slides. They were there. This slide in particular was there, and then it was gone, and then it was back. And there were multiple sightings of people seeing this missing, and so maybe we need to do the ghost hunt on our PowerPoint programming. But then also want to point out a couple of different slides here from our cruise night, and that's the fire department participating and folks checking out Engine 2, and then some activities for our law enforcement and law enforcement partners in the surrounding area. We've got the drone footage of the bike patrol on patrol with the cruisers lined up, marshaled for the rollout. We've got the pre-event briefing of all of the area law enforcement community members who were participating and assisting us, and then folks that are watching the storms rolling through and at the Emergency Operations Center or our talk to decide when and how to call that, and being in communication with the cruise night planners. I want to thank everyone for their assistance there. And then to highlight some tentative agenda items that we got coming up, we got Fire Prevention Week, the 6th through the 12th. We'll have a proclamation for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and then we'll have a resolution finding and identifying the proposed RHID district for lots 2 through 8 in the Fairway Vista addition, and then a vacation easement at 1015 North Cherry. And that concludes my report, if there are no questions of myself or another member of our team.
Anybody have no questions?
Thank you.
All right, you're good. Thanks. We'll go on to governing body comments. Let's start with Commissioner Kaler.
None at this time.
Commissioner Clayton.
I'll just say a thanks to the Chamber and FCDC on hosting Panasonic luncheon today that a few of us in this room were able to attend. It was great. It was very informational. All the great things that Panasonic hopefully is bringing to proximate, cities within half an hour, 45 minutes, the DeSoto plant to bring.
Good point. Commissioner Crowley.
I have no comment.
Nothing. Pro Tem Allen.
No comment.
Let me just add one more thing about the car show. I know the weather kind of set in a little early, kind of closed it down. Chief Weingartner, are there any concerns at your department? It sounded like everything was pretty well maintained. Do you have anything to report?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. No, everything went really well during the cruise night activities. We towed a lot less cars than we normally do, so thank you for all of the people who attended, for their cooperation, not parking down there. We started about 20 minutes early this year, but because of the storms, we ended about an hour and a half early. So, and also thank people for their organized departure from the area as the storms rolled in.
Good to hear.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, we do appreciate Jeremy Bennett and Andy Stowing to tow those vehicles for free, and so we do appreciate him as well for his participation in our community. So, announcements would be there October 2nd, City Commission meeting at 7 p.m. And we got one on October 9th. October 16th with the Franklin County Community Outlook, Ottawa University, and also City Commission meeting at 10 a.m.